Imagine a world where Alzheimer's disease is no longer an inevitable decline, a landscape where a diagnosis does not signal the end of hope, but the beginning of a new chapter. Picture a reality where neurodegenerative disorders are met with cutting-edge therapy and swift medical intervention, not just the slow march of memory loss and despair. Today, Japan is aiming to make this vision a reality, standing at the very front line of a medical revolution. This movement is powered by an extraordinary alliance between two very different innovators, a trailblazing American biotech company and a forward-thinking Japanese healthcare powerhouse. But beneath the optimistic headlines and bold announcements lies a far deeper narrative, one that could reshape not only medicine, but also the global economy, the fabric of aging societies, and the future of how we invest in healthcare breakthroughs. Let us rewind and set the stage. Neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are not just clinical puzzles. They are looming social and economic earthquakes. Across the globe, populations are aging at an unprecedented rate. But nowhere is this more acute than in Japan. Consider this. Close to 1 in every 3 Japanese citizens is now over the age of 65. By the time we reach the year 2030, experts estimate that the regenerative medicine market in Japan alone could soar to a staggering $25 billion, almost entirely driven by the needs and demands of its aging population. That is more than the combined GDP of many small countries, devoted entirely to the pursuit of healthy aging and disease management. Why does this matter? Because Alzheimer's disease in particular is not just a medical condition. It is a crisis that ripples through families, communities, and entire nations. In Japan, where longevity is prized but the birth rate continues to fall, the looming burden of elderly care is threatening to tip the scales of social stability and economic sustainability. Healthcare costs for neurodegenerative diseases are projected to skyrocket, placing strain on public resources and private families alike. In 2019, global spending on dementia care reached over $1 trillion. In Japan, estimates suggest that caring for individuals with Alzheimer's and other dementias could consume as much as 1/5 of the national healthcare budget by the next decade. The stakes could not be higher. Against this urgent backdrop, enter NKGen Biotech, a visionary American company specializing in the development of natural killer, or NK, cell therapies. Their approach is not science fiction, but science fact. By harnessing the body's own immune system, specifically these powerful NK cells, NKGen aims to combat diseases that have long been considered incurable. Their flagship therapy, troculeucel, stands out as an autologous, non-genetically modified NK cell treatment. This means it uses a patient's own cells, collected and processed without genetic manipulation, reducing many of the risks that have dogged previous cell therapies. The therapy is designed to specifically target the twin culprits of Alzheimer's: neuroinflammation and the infamous amyloid plaques that accumulate in the brain, destroying neurons and erasing memories. Partnering with NKGen is Bio, a Japanese healthcare innovator that has made waves for its keen sense of emerging trends and its willingness to invest in high-risk, high-reward medical technologies. Together, they have crafted a plan to bring troculeucel to Japan, a nation hungry for solutions and uniquely positioned to lead the world in regenerative medicine. But what makes this partnership so powerful is not just the science or the investment, it is the policy environment. Japan's government, recognizing the demographic cliff ahead, has enacted some of the most progressive and responsive regulatory frameworks anywhere in the world. Unlike the lengthy, multi-year approval processes that slow innovation in Europe or North America, Japan's Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Agency, known as the PMDA, has created pathways for expedited review and conditional approval, especially for therapies that address urgent, unmet medical needs. A spokesperson from the PMDA recently affirmed, "We are committed to supporting companies bringing innovative medical products to the Japanese market through consultations and streamlined reviews." This is not just a promise. It is already being put into action. Through these fast-tracked regulatory pathways, therapies like troculeucel could reach patients years ahead of the global curve. In fact, Bio is already preparing to dose the first Japanese patients within the next 12 months, a timeline that would be the envy of biotech firms worldwide. But speed is not the only advantage. Bio's alliance with Alfrisa Holdings, one of Japan's largest pharmaceutical distribution networks, ensures that if troculeucel succeeds, it can be delivered quickly and efficiently to hospitals and clinics across the country. Behind the scenes, the partnership is further strengthened by undisclosed capital infusions, providing the financial muscle needed to navigate the expensive and complex world of clinical development. Yet for all the optimism, The path ahead is fraught with uncertainty. The history of Alzheimer's research is littered with disappointment. Therapies that initially dazzled in small-scale studies, only to fail in larger, pivotal trials. The infamous amyloid hypothesis, which has underpinned decades of research and billions of dollars in investment, has yet to deliver a truly transformative therapy. Drug after drug has stumbled at the finish line, leaving patients and families with little more than incremental improvements. In this high-stakes environment, the world is watching NKGen and Bio with a mix of hope and skepticism. Paul Y. Song, MD, the chairman and chief executive officer of NKGen Biotech, recently remarked, "Our science and clinical data have remained a consistent source of strength, gaining significant traction. This confidence is buoyed by the fact that troculeucel is already in a phase 1 and 2A clinical trial, known in the research community as NCT061899963. Data from this trial is expected by the end of the next year, and its results could be the tipping point that sets off a new global race in Alzheimer's treatment." So, what exactly is at stake? If troculeucel's early trial results are positive, Japan could become the first country in the world to offer this therapy to Alzheimer's patients on a broad scale. Thanks to the PMDA's flexible approach and Bio's deft navigation of the regulatory landscape, the therapy could receive accelerated approval as soon as late 2026 or early 2027. This would allow thousands of patients to access troculeucel years before similar treatments reach the market in Europe, the United States, or other advanced economies. Such a breakthrough would not only transform the lives of Japanese families, but also send shockwaves through the global regulatory community, forcing policymakers elsewhere to reconsider the pace at which they approve cell therapies for neurodegenerative diseases. The domino effect could be enormous. Regulators in other countries may feel compelled to update their own approval pathways, spurred by patient advocacy groups and the tangible example of lives improved in Japan. Pharmaceutical and biotech companies worldwide would likely shift R&D resources towards NK cell therapies, triggering a new wave of investment, competition, and innovation. In the words of one analyst from Fierce Biotech, NK cell therapies hold promise for neurodegenerative diseases due to their ability to modulate the immune system. This simple insight could catalyze a paradigm shift in how we think about and treat brain disorders. But let's not forget the risks. The field is crowded, with dozens of companies, some backed by multi-billion-dollar budgets, racing to develop their own Alzheimer's therapies. Any safety concerns, unexpected side effects, or underwhelming results could cause investors to pull back, halting progress and potentially dooming troculeucel to the long list of failed Alzheimer's drugs. Even if the therapy is effective, scaling up production to meet demand and keeping costs affordable will be a massive logistical and economic challenge. Manufacturing autologous cell therapies is notoriously resource-intensive, requiring personalized processing and strict quality controls. In Japan, where the population is aging rapidly, ensuring equitable access without overwhelming the healthcare system will require not just scientific ingenuity, but also robust policy and operational planning. There is also the question of international competition. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration granted troculeucel fast-track designation, recognizing its potential to address an urgent, unmet medical need. But regulatory hurdles remain formidable, and the path to widespread adoption is far from guaranteed. Meanwhile, in Europe, regulatory processes are still evolving, with the European Medicines Agency closely watching developments in Japan as a possible template for their own reforms. Still, the partnership between NKGen and Bio appears to be firing on all cylinders. Robert E. Clare, President and Chief Executive Officer of Bio, has said, "Our partnership with Alfresa Group will enable Bio to advance and expand its portfolio and impact. With a powerful distribution network, ample capital, and the full support of Japan's regulatory authorities, the odds of a successful launch are better than ever before." As James Graff, the interim Chief Financial Officer of NKGen, explained, "We do not expect this transition to materially affect our ongoing financing discussions." In other words, the company remains agile and resilient despite the uncertainties of biotech markets, qualities that are critical for survival in breakthrough industries. The implications extend far beyond the laboratory or the hospital ward. For everyday people, whether or not you live in Japan or have loved ones affected by Alzheimer's, this story offers powerful lessons and opportunities. First, Japan's example demonstrates that bold regulatory reform can accelerate medical innovation, allowing patients to benefit from new therapies much sooner. Traditionally, drug approval processes in major markets can take anywhere from 5 to 15 years, with countless hurdles along the way. Japan's willingness to experiment with conditional approvals, based on early but compelling clinical data, could light the way for other countries grappling with the dual challenge of aging populations and rising healthcare costs. If you or someone you care about is facing a neurodegenerative disease, keep a close eye on international clinical trials and regulatory developments. What happens in Japan over the next few years could dramatically alter the landscape of treatment options available worldwide. Already, international patient advocacy groups are calling for greater collaboration and faster data sharing, recognizing that breakthroughs in one country can quickly reverberate across the globe. For investors and technology watchers, the NKGen Biotech story is a masterclass in risk, reward, and the critical importance of strategic partnership. While the precise terms of Biotech's equity investment in NKGen remain undisclosed, the broader message is clear. In biotechnology, alliances and regulatory agility can matter as much as billion-dollar war chests. The potential market for Alzheimer's therapies is vast. Some analysts predict it could exceed $100 billion globally within the next 2 decades. Early movers who can navigate complex regulatory terrain and forge the right local partnerships stand to reap outsized rewards. But the story does not end there. Policymakers around the world are watching Japan with intense interest. The Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, an international advocacy group, has emphasized that regenerative medicine offers the potential to restore function and improve patient outcomes in previously untreatable conditions. By creating clear, conditional pathways for new therapies, governments can foster an environment where innovation flourishes, without compromising safety or public trust. Japan's approach could become a template for the global fight against not only Alzheimer's, but a broad array of age-related diseases and chronic conditions. Let us consider some potential future scenarios. In 1, troculeucel's Phase 2A trial delivers outstanding results, prompting accelerated approval in Japan. This would lead to rapid adoption, with hospitals across the country treating thousands of patients and setting a new global benchmark in Alzheimer's care. NKGen Biotech, buoyed by success in Japan, could then attract major pharmaceutical partners or investors, paving the way for expansion into Europe, North America, and beyond. The company's market capitalization could soar, and competitors would scramble to catch up. In a second scenario, troculeucel faces stiff competition from next-generation monoclonal antibodies or other cell therapies. Regulatory delays or unexpected safety concerns could slow its progress, raising costs and eroding investor confidence. In this more challenging future, NKGen and Bio would need to adapt quickly, perhaps by refining their therapy or pursuing new indications beyond Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. A third, even more optimistic scenario might see troculeucel not only succeed in Alzheimer's, but also demonstrate significant benefits in other neurodegenerative or inflammatory diseases. This could attract the attention of global pharmaceutical giants, leading to licensing deals, joint ventures, or even acquisition offers. In this world, the Japanese government's early bet on regenerative medicine would pay off handsomely, positioning the country as a global leader in biotech innovation and elder care. But what about the therapy itself? What sets troculeucel apart from the many other treatments being developed? The answer lies in its mechanism of action and its manufacturing process. As an autologous, non-genetically modified cell therapy, troculeucel uses each patient's own NK cells, collected from their blood, and processed with minimal manipulation. This reduces the risk of immune rejection and sidesteps many of the ethical and safety concerns associated with genetically engineered or donor-derived cell therapies. In the past, some cell therapies have been hampered by severe side effects, such as cytokine release syndrome or graft versus host disease. By focusing on the patient's own cells and avoiding genetic modification, troculeucel aims to deliver potent therapeutic effects with a safer profile. Moreover, recent advances in cell processing and manufacturing technology have made it possible to produce autologous therapies at scale, albeit with significant investment in infrastructure. Bio and Alfrisa Holdings are working to develop a nationwide network of collection centers, processing facilities, and distribution hubs to ensure that troculeucel can be delivered efficiently to patients throughout Japan. This kind of logistical challenge is reminiscent of the rapid vaccine rollouts seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, where governments and private companies had to mobilize unprecedented resources to reach millions in a matter of months. Let us not overlook the broader social and psychological impact of these developments. For decades, the shadow of Alzheimer's has loomed over aging societies, fueling anxiety and shaping public policy. The prospect of a truly effective therapy, one that does more than merely slow decline, but actually restores cognitive function. Could transform not just medicine, but also how we plan for aging, retirement, and intergenerational care. In Japan, a culture that deeply values respect for elders and the continuity of family, such a breakthrough would carry profound meaning. But with hope comes responsibility. As these therapies move closer to reality, ethical questions will become increasingly pressing. Who will have access to the first treatments, and at what cost? How will policymakers ensure equity in distribution, especially in rural or underserved communities? What safeguards will be in place to monitor long-term safety and efficacy? These are the kinds of questions that regulators, clinicians, and patient groups must grapple with in the coming years. For now, the spotlight remains on Japan's bold experiment. By embracing innovation, forging strategic partnerships, and rewriting the rules of medical regulation, the country is staking its future on the promise of regenerative medicine. If troculeucel lives up to its early promise, we could witness the dawn of a new era, not just for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but for a host of diseases that have long defied hope. And here's a final, little-known fact. Troculeucel is being developed as an autologous, non-genetically modified therapy. This means it relies on each patient's own cells, processed in a way that preserves their natural function while minimizing risks. Unlike some experimental therapies that have run into fierce regulatory resistance over genetic modification or donor compatibility, troculeucel neatly sidesteps these hurdles. Japan's regulatory environment, designed to reward exactly this kind of safe, patient-specific innovation, could make it the perfect proving ground. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on global breakthroughs in medicine and technology, now is the time to subscribe and turn on notifications. The story unfolding in Japan is not just a medical drama. It is a blueprint for the future of healthcare, investment, and human possibility. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe Japan's approach will set a new gold standard for the world? Would you, or someone you love, consider cell therapy for Alzheimer's if it became available? Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more stories at the intersection.